welcome to Scrollin', episode 83. I'm Ket. Joining me, as usual, Davius Starjumper. How's it going, man?
It's going good.
Glad to hear it. Are you ready to get lost in the depths with the Lost Depths DLC?
Ooh, I see what you did there.
Yeah, I thought of that one ahead of time.
Let's dive in.
Okay.
Ooh.
All right.
Oh.
We're going to dive into those depths and get lost.
Already. We got a winner.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you're ready because the Lost Depths DLC, it is upon us. It's going to be here this next coming Monday, as of the time we're recording this, August 22nd, for PC. It'll be 2 weeks later on consoles. So last week was the fifth and final week of the PTS. What a journey we've been on.
Yeah, when you said final week in my head, I imagined you having finger quotations. Final week of changes. Quotations.
Yes, you could not see the finger quotes I was making.
They were there.
Actually, yeah, the final week will very likely actually be next week, the live patch, and maybe even a week after that as well. We actually already know of at least one thing that's going to be on the live patch that isn't on PTS. We'll talk about that a little while later, but there's at least one confirmed thing, and I'm sure there'll be a few other surprises as well. Wouldn't surprise me at all.
Yeah, gonna be a couple things. It's been a journey. We've had some changes.
Maybe some surprise Templar buffs. Holding out hope.
Yeah. Hey, I like
Doesn't
that.
Seem likely.
I like that positivity right there. That's the way to think of it.
I'm trying. It's like taking every ounce of will that I can muster to have some optimism with that. But I just feel like we got to make mention of the fact that it's highly unusual to be getting this level of changes this late in the PTS cycle, the final week. And we're about to get into it, but it's some pretty significant stuff, like some stuff that's going to affect your builds and the meta and things like that. Another thing to keep in mind is before the PTS ever went up or anything, they had made comments on live streams and things that they have more changes than this planned, and they didn't want to do a whole bunch of things all at once. So if things seem kind of incomplete or whatever, there's a good chance with the Q4 DLC, we'll kind of get the other half of this, and some other things might click into place at that point. That's something I'm trying to keep in mind as well.
There's not enough changes just yet.
Yeah. The combat system in this game just doesn't change often enough. That's the problem. So one of the things that they were testing last week were these new Battleground weekend events that are going to be happening. So that's just basically a reminder that this is going to be something that will happen with this new patch. I'm not sure if it's going to be every weekend or just certain weekends. I don't know if there's been like a schedule announced or anything like that, but basically the idea is during these weekend events, the queue will be restricted to just one game type, right? So you'll have a domination weekend or a deathmatch weekend or a chaos ball weekend. Something like that. Is there a total of 5 different game modes, I want to say?
Let's see. There's the land games, which are actually flags, and then the flag games, which aren't really flags.
Right.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep, 5. Deathmatch, chaos ball, 2 types of land games, but flags, and then relics.
Yeah. So if they did it every weekend, it would be on a 5-week rotation, I guess. But I don't really know what their plans are with that. I don't know. How are you feeling about these Battlegrounds weekend events? Do you think it seems like a good idea or what?
I do think it's a good idea. Just being selfish, it's going to be really nice to have guaranteed death matches again, even if it's just for a weekend. Yeah. That's going to be a great weekend. I really think you put it best into perspective in the sense that initially when they announced this, it was kind of like, it's good that we'll at least have deathmatch, but there's also going to be relic weekends and stuff. So I wasn't super thrilled. I was kind of like, all right, I guess it's something. But you kind of gave me a good perspective on it. Like, at least they're doing something for Battlegrounds. Like, it is focused on Battlegrounds. They're making changes. This is a improvement solely involving Battlegrounds, and that's a really good sign that they're at least giving Battlegrounds specifically some attention.
Yeah, I'm happy to see Battlegrounds just getting any attention at all at this point,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And anything's better than the nothing at all we've been getting.
Yeah.
And this doesn't seem like the ideal solution necessarily, but it does seem like a pretty decent step at least. Like, let's just start here and then see what we want to do after that. I mean, I can already see like just a real simple thing that they could maybe do would be like change it so that you're not restricted to a specific mode each weekend, but it's a specific category of mode each weekend.
Yeah.
Right, so you'd have your land grab, you'd have your flag games, and then you'd have deathmatch. Then you'd have a 3-week rotation.
Yep.
So, that'd be something that'd be a pretty nice compromise for the people who are really just interested in deathmatch. And then, if we had a 3-week rotation where every 3 weekends were guaranteed deathmatch, I could see some guilds getting pretty hyped about that and like getting geared up and ready. Like, here it comes, deathmatch weekend is coming up. Let's get ready.
It'd be kind of like a little miniature mid-year mayhem. Almost.
Yeah, exactly. And that's just one simple, easy little tweak they could make to this system that would please a lot of people and be a really nice compromise between, everybody who plays Battlegrounds for various reasons.
Yeah. Well, and I think this, I'm going to look at it from the positive side. I think this is probably going to change up kind of how I do PvP a little bit, because I'll be honest, if there's the Relic weekend or even like I can't remember which one it is, but the land grab where you have to chase down the flags, which is...
Oh, Crazy King.
Crazy King, I'm not crazy about.
Right.
Just because it's a lot of running and chasing. But
yeah,
I can see those specific weekends. I'll probably just hang out in Imperial City, or like I'll hang out in Cyrodiil during those weekends. And so I think this could actually encourage me on those specific weekends that I'm not crazy about those BGs, is that I won't hop into that BG queue. I'll instead do Imperial City or Cyrodiil.
That's a good point. We're always talking about how we should do more Imperial City, and that'd be just, well, may as well do it this weekend since we don't really care for, capture the relic or whatever.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Another thing, too, about this is this will be a data point. Like, they'll be able to see which weekend events get the most participation, which ones get the least, and that sort of thing.
Absolutely.
And so, I don't know if they will use that information to make any decisions or not, but they'll have that option. That data will be there, and if they want to use that to make future decisions, they can. So that's a good thing, too. A fair number of combat and balance changes. I'm talking like on the level of like a week 3 of PTS. Again, I have to remind everyone, this is the final week of PTS, and there's a lot of stuff here. Dragon Knight is just one small thing. The Molten Whip, the Seething Fury stacks are going to last for 15 seconds instead of 10 seconds. And the devs say that's basically just because dots are going to have a longer duration, so they wanted that to be a little bit easier to manage. So that's basically it for Dragon Knights. I think they're looking like they're in a pretty good spot. Nightblades actually have a lot of things.
Buckle up. A lot going on here.
Yeah, we might spend a little time on Nightblade. Impale, the Magicamorph of the execute ability, now deals 330% execute damage rather than 300%. So just a little bit of a buff to that ability. Twisting Path is having its damage increased by 50%. The devs say to help it stand out a bit more. My interpretation of that is just because, basically. Just wanted to buff it.
Because they could.
I think there's another reason why they really did that, and we'll come back to that here in just a minute. Surprise Attack, the stamina morph of the melee spammable. So remember, it has a guaranteed crit chance whenever you hit somebody from a flank. Now that has a 4-second cooldown. So it's a guaranteed crit once every 4 seconds when hitting your enemy from a flank. The devs say that's to prevent it from having too much sustained burst, is their reasoning there. I can certainly see that reasoning. So compared to the live version of Surprise Attack, you're basically giving up a stun from a flank in exchange for a guaranteed crit from a flank once every 4 seconds. That seems like kind of a raw deal, but I'm not so sure it's as bad as it seems. We're actually going to come back to that and talk about that a little bit more here in just a minute. For now, let's move on and talk about Concealed Weapon, which is the Magicamorph of the same ability. It's no longer going to give you that 300 weapon and spell damage after you leave stealth. Instead, it's going to give you a unique 10% damage boost to all damage done when you leave stealth or when Major Expedition ends. And that's going to have a 5-second duration. That's a weird condition when Major Expedition ends. But I actually think you'll be able to make use of that really, really easily. The devs say that's to give it more of a benefit in PvE is their main motivation for making this change, because the previous iteration, you don't use stealth in PvE at all, so you're not getting that 300 weapon and spell damage out of stealth at all. This way you actually can, because Twisting Path, remember, is getting buffed by 50%. That's your ground AoE dot. That gives you Major Expedition when you're standing in it, and for 4 seconds after leaving it. So I could definitely see like a PvE Magic and Nightblade or Hybrid Nightblade, whatever. They're already using Twisting Path. It's a very strong dot. So you can just kind of make it part of your rotation where you're dipping in and out of that Twisting Path once every 4 or 5 seconds or so. And basically, I think you could, if you kind of get good at that, you could probably pretty easily have a 100% uptime on that 10% damage boost. So that seems pretty good. If there are other Nightblades in the group and they're casting Twisting Path as well, then that's just refreshing that on you over and over and over again without you really even having to do anything. But even by yourself, you could do it pretty easily.
Yeah.
As far as PvP goes, this concealed weapon, this 10% damage bonus, it seems really, really nice. Yeah. I mean, that's a 10% bonus to all damage, to any proc sets you're using, your ultimates, your glyphs, whatever else. And it's unique. It'll stack with, Major Berserk or whatever. It's very easy to activate. It's very easy to plan your combo around it. It has no cooldown, so every single time you come out of stealth or every single time Major Expedition ends, you're going to get that. 5 seconds is a pretty good size window for a PvP Nightblade. You only really need like 3 seconds to pull off your combo. And if you want to refresh that window, just go into stealth again and go for your attack again, and it'll refresh right away. I think you'll also be able to do things like activate Major Expedition, then go into stealth, and then when you come out of stealth, you'll get 5 seconds of this buff, right? And then a little while later, Major Expedition will fall off, and that'll refresh that duration. So you get like maybe 7 or 8 seconds out of it, actually, in that case.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to be pretty common to keep that buff up, which 10% damage buff, that's great. It's a great buff.
Yeah, and the fact that it's unique.
Yeah.
That seems really strong. And you get that Minor Expedition while slotted. I mean, I feel like this is by far the superior morph to Surprise Attack, the Stamina morph. Now that everything's hybridized and everything, as long as you can sustain that Magicka cost, there's no reason to use Surprise Attack, I don't think, that I can see. Just sustain reasons alone would be the only thing that I can think of. Let's revisit this thing about this ability no longer stunning from a flank. This is kind of a realization I had. I mentioned on the last episode how it's kind of funny you don't see any Nightblades on the forums or anywhere else really complaining about the fact that Surprise Attack is losing that stun. You'd think you'd see some Nightblades complaining about that. But what if I told you that the reason they're not complaining is because they realize this actually isn't a nerf. This is actually potentially a buff if you are a skilled enough player to take advantage of it. That's the thing. I don't know if that's going to be me or not. I'm going to try. But
hey, you're a Nightblade main now. It's a thing.
Yeah, I'm full on Nightblade main. No, that's not true. So here's the thing. Surprise Attack and Concealed Weapon, both morphs, they no longer stun from a flank, but they do still set your target off balance from a flank. And when enemies are off balance, they can be stunned with a heavy attack or with a medium attack. So as it is right now on the live server, if you stun somebody with Surprise Attack and then try to hit them with Merciless Resolve, that's your big burst attack, it's going to miss every single time. Like 100% of the time, they're going to break out of that stun and dodge just as you're shooting that Merciless at them, and it's never ever going to hit them if you try to do it that way. But with this new version, with the PTS version, you hit them with Surprise Attack or Concealed Weapon. It sets them off balance, and then you do a medium attack, like you partially charge a heavy attack and then release that into your Merciless Resolve. And that medium attack is going to be the thing that stuns them, right? Because they're off balance. And if you're weaving that into your Merciless, I mean, the time between that medium attack and that Merciless Resolve is like, ba-bum. It's that fast. There's no possibility of reacting fast enough to get out of that stun and avoid that Merciless Resolve. So if you can set them off balance with Surprise Attack, land that medium attack and weave your Merciless right in behind it, it's guaranteed to hit. For sure going to hit them. So it's going to be tricky to pull that off. I think you're going to have a little bit of skill to do it. But if you can, that's a good thing, like it's like a high skill ceiling sort of thing. And if you can pull it off, it's going to be all the more satisfying.
And rewarding. It's going to be a big time reward if you can pull off that nice, good timing and skill.
Oh, yeah. And, man, Merciless Resolve, I mean, ask any Nightblade, the biggest issue is their attacks all get dodged. And Merciless Resolve, prime example, it's a super hard-hitting ability, but it's a slow-moving projectile. It's very predictable. It's very telegraphed. Everyone dodges it all the time. So if you got the skills, this is a solution for that. So, that's why no Nightblades are complaining about that. Dark Cloak, the healing morph of the cloak ability, is getting some further adjustments. So they've gone back to making it scale with your max health rather than your missing health, but they've reduced the healing by 42% compared to the live version. So I think that's going to end up being 5% of your max health. So if you have 30k max health, that would be like a 1500 heal per second for 3 seconds. So pretty weak. And then that gets cut in half in PvP, right?
Yeah, it's not great.
But they gave it this new thing. The heal is now increased by 150% while not moving. And the dev comment says they're trying to find a sweet spot between making it viable for PvE tanks while not letting it be too powerful in PvP. And they said they might need to make some slight number adjustments, but they don't think there's going to be any more big swings in the design. That's weird that they're kind of being so concerned about PvP. I really have never found Brawler Blades to be a major problem. Like, the biggest complaint I have about Brawler Blades is, yeah, they're hard to kill.
Yeah.
But they don't really pose much of an offensive threat, Like, you can really just kind of ignore them a lot of the time. The 7 of them that exist, in the entire game. So it's weird that they were trying to tread lightly in that regard. I've seen a lot of PvE Nightblade tanks say that they don't like this version, that 150% increase while not moving. There's only a handful of boss fights where you're really actually going to be able to take advantage of that. A lot of boss fights actually require you to move around quite a bit. And this having such a short duration, 3-second duration, doesn't seem great. This seems like one of the many changes being made this PTS that they probably should have just left that one how it was. It wasn't really a problem.
Unnecessary change, but they already started the change. No going back.
Yeah, exactly. I would not be surprised at all if this ability continues to be iterated upon in future patches, because that does not seem... This is an ability that's been pretty enjoyable by the few people out there that prefer this morph rather than being invisible. It is very strong. It does make them very tanky. Maybe the healing did need to come down a little bit, but I think they overdid it a little bit.
Yeah.
But the vast majority of Nightblades are going to be using invisibility, so most Nightblades probably aren't really too upset about that. As for Sorcerers, Crystal Weapon is getting some additional adjustments. So the second hit of Crystal Weapon is now going to hit for 45% of the first hit's damage rather than 30%. I have not seen any discussion whatsoever about that adjustment right there, which tells me that sorcerers don't really care. It's not...
It's not a big enough change to even talk about.
Yeah, I don't think it's anything that's going to change how they use the ability or whether or not they do use it or whatever. I still think it's a totally fine ability. You need a spammable. In just about any build, you need to have a spammable. And this is a decent one to choose from, out of the few options that you have. Now this is an interesting one. I'm not sure interesting in a positive way, but Daedric Prey, that's the other morph of Haunting Curse. This is now going to increase your pet damage by 45% instead of 20%. So 25% increase to that. And I looked up that ability. The description does not say that it has to be your class summons. So I'm assuming that monster, proc set pets and stuff like that would count as well.
Interesting. I think you made a great point on this in the sense that this might be kind of the upcoming direction for mag sorcs. They're very kind of lost right now, and this seems like this is where the arrow is going to be pointing.
Yeah, there's not a lot of. I mean, there's some really strong Stam Sorks and really strong hybrid Sorks out there, but if you want to be a pure Mag Sork, yeah, they're really not in a great spot right now, and so it's looking like the strongest Mag Sork spec maybe is going to be Pet Sorks here pretty soon. You remember a time when Zoo Sorks were everywhere, and it was terrible.
Yes, you would make a joke. You'd get on in a BG, and there'd be a team of 4 Pet Sorks, and it was just like, oh my gosh, just
Every single one of them. I mean, we were in guild with people. They would do it to troll.
Yeah,
on purpose. They'd make a group of 4 Sorks. Each Sork has 4 pets, per per player. So you're talking like 20 or more actual bodies running around. Pretty ridiculous and absolutely cancer to go up against. You can't actually land an attack on anybody ever.
Yeah.
And if those pets are actually going to be doing pretty good damage, I mean, that 45%, I think there's a set you can get that increases it by another 16%, your pet damage. I mean, you could really get that stuff up there. So look out for that Zoo Sork comeback. I hope I'm wrong. I would love to be wrong, but could happen. Wardens, the Screaming Cliff Racer. That's the Magicka morph of the class Spammable. It's now going to give you 300 weapon and spell damage when you hit an off-balance enemy rather than 200. So that's going to be 400 total. You get 100 for hitting anybody, and then now you'll get another 300 if they're off balance. And the Cliff Racer sets them off balance as well, right? So that's pretty not 400 is pretty juicy amount.
That's a lot, and it's going to be very easy to, like, if this is your spammable, I mean, that's 100% uptime.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think it's like a 15-second duration, I want to say.
In a PvP setting, I mean, that's 100% uptime of 400 weapon and spell damage.
Yeah. PvE and PvE, I would say, too. Yeah, both.
Yeah, that's true, too. Yeah, I mean, I have a stamina warden, and I'm going to do everything I can to make this his actual spam, a Magicka spammable on a stamina warden. We'll see if I can make it work, but
Wretched Vitality.
There it is.
That's the answer.
Wretched Vitality.
It won't even be hard.
All said and done. But yeah, 400 weapon and spell damage. It's interesting to me that they're getting real popular with these 300 weapon and spell damage buffs for Magicka abilities. They're kind of adding it into certain classes, and they seem to all be the Magicka morph.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to me that it wasn't that long ago we had kind of mentioned that Magicka didn't really have the same hitting power that stamina did. But it's interesting to me now that they're doing this, because this hybrid stamina Magicka characters exist so much that it almost seems like this is kind of late. It's almost a little late to do this, because it's kind of like this buff to get Magicka classes to hit harder, but all the stamina classes are just going to take advantage of this because the hybridization of Magicka and stamina, I would think most classes that have this unique 300 weapon and spell damage buff, and in this case 400, but that I think stamina and Magicka are going to take advantage of it now. It's just interesting to me that it's almost like it's a couple patches too late, but I mean, I'm not complaining about this one. Like I said, I'm going to try to find a way to put this on my warden.
Yeah, I think I was just joking about Wretched Vitality, but honestly, as long as that set exists, I feel like you can't buff Magicka without also buffing stamina.
Yeah.
So, the Screaming Cliff Racer, the big issue with that is it's highly visible. It moves very slowly, and it gets dodged a lot, and those are the reasons wardens don't use it a lot. But man, if they're dangling 400 weapon and spell damage in front of you, I bet a lot of wardens are going to get over that. It's kind of my prediction there.
Me specifically, it's easy just because my current warden is using the point blank snipe, which is, I would say, one of the few abilities that gets dodged more often than the Cliff Racer.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds, when people hear that sound, they just dodge. It's just reflex.
Built in.
Yeah. Arctic Blast, yet another buff to Arctic Blast. Like, how many buffs can you give to an ability? It now has a 15% chance to apply a status rather than a 1% chance. So that'd be the chilled status. It deals frost damage. 15% chance to apply the chilled status effect. That's pretty nice. In addition to This is now a really strong heal. It's an instant stun. It deals a decent amount of AoE damage for a very long period of time. And it has a 15% chance to apply the chilled status.
All the things.
I was thinking, of all the odd changes and odd choices that are being made with this patch, this is the one thing out of the whole bunch, this specific ability that they're just doing exactly what Wardens want them to do. It's just thank you for making this ability perfect. I didn't think this was necessary. The 15% chance to apply a status effect, not necessary at all. I think Wardens were already thrilled about Arctic Blast. So this is just another extra little cherry on top, but I wonder if it's maybe a step too far.
I think Wardens are just happy in general right now with this upcoming patch.
Yeah, they're looking really, really good. The one downside is Scorch basically is getting nerfed a little bit, but they're getting all these other buffs that I think are just gonna in the end kind of make up for it.
Yeah. I would think, even with the damage reduction to Scorch, if you have that Cliff Racer and you're getting that 400 weapon and spell damage, I think you're actually going to end up ahead rather than less damage where you were before.
Probably so. And then last thing for Wardens is Winter's Revenge. That's the ground AoE dot, deals frost damage. It's now going to deal 30% additional damage if you're holding a Destro staff when you cast it. So not when you're on your Destro bar. It's if you have it, so you can cast it on your back bar as long as you have a Destro staff, and then when you bar swap, it's going to keep that 30% damage increase. One thing is interesting there is that it's a 30% damage increase that requires a Destro staff, whereas the Nightblade's Twisting Path, which is the same type of ability, it just gets a straight 50% damage increase, no requirement whatsoever. Kind of a weird inconsistency there.
It's interesting to see a class ability tied to a specific weapon type.
Yeah, really.
It's very interesting to see that. They're really, I don't know if I can think of a class ability that really forces you to a specific weapon type.
Yeah, and it's definitely their way of saying not for stamina wardens.
Yeah. We want Magdens.
Yeah. I guess with hybridization now, this is how they have to differentiate, only for this type of build or whatever.
It's going to be hilarious when all three of these abilities find their way on a stamina warden. They'll just throw a Destro staff back bar.
Yeah, you could.
Find totally a way to put Arctic Blast. They'll have a Wretched Vitality Destro staff on the back bar, and they'll use the magic Cliff Racer.
Arctic Blast.
All on a stamina warden.
Arctic Blast will be on every warden. Stamina Magica, I guarantee you. I promise you that. That's going to be too good. So that's basically it for wardens. Yeah, they're going to be in great shape. I think we're going to be seeing a lot more wardens. Templar.
They did something.
Here it is, guys. We're at the final week of PTS. The first week of PTS, we got the nerf Sledgehammer, and we've just been waiting this whole time, just totally left out to dry. Just begging for some sort of scrap, unnerf us just a little bit, please.
Let them have it.
Here it is, guys. In the final week of PTS, we finally got it. Radiant Destruction, that's the Jesus Beam ability. They increase the damage by 23%.
Boom.
Sigh of relief.
Templars are back.
We're back, guys. So everything's going to be all right. That's sarcasm, if you couldn't tell. Very few Templars, in PvP at least, very few Templars use this ability. In fact, the only Templars I do see using Radiant Destruction are actually healers. And it's like their one damage ability that they have slotted, and they'll use that to focus down low health targets to help the team get the kill, but otherwise they're healing. Actual offensively focused Templars hardly ever use this ability, and I don't plan to start. It's not an ability that I really want to use.
No, it's completely against your style play because you have to stand in place. So
yeah, and it's like a channel. So actually doesn't help me out at all, and probably most Templars, it's not going to help them out at all.
The only time I could see this being helpful for Templars is PvE. I think this ability can do pretty high damage, and 23% is a pretty hefty buff. So
yeah, it is a hefty buff for the people who do use it. Hey, great for you guys. Congrats on your buff.
Cat said happily.
So, yeah, not a happy time for Templars right now. So that's it for the class changes. Under the Alliance War, Resolving Vigor, that's the selfish version, the one that most stamina builds use. They've reverted the healing nerf, so never mind on that. It's going to heal for just as much as it does right now in the live server. I think that's a good thing. Just for this morph. The other morph, still nerfed. And it's going to grant minor resolve instead of major resolve now. And the devs say that's to avoid harming class identity. We all know class identity comes from your armor buff. That's where you get it from.
Listen, if you're a Sork, you need to be able to not see your character.
Yep.
If you're a Warden, you need to make sure you've got little icicles on your character.
And that everyone else does too.
That you ruin everybody else's look.
Yeah.
That's what it's all about.
Yeah. You get the lightning. You look like a lightning. That's what makes you look like your class. Is your armor buff. So I do kind of in a weird way get their reasoning on that. But basically everybody's going to have minor resolve on top of their major resolve from now on.
Yeah. So, nobody's not using Vigor now that the healing's back. Everybody's going to. I mean, at least in a PvP sense, everybody has this on their bar.
I would say most people, yeah. Like pure magicka builds are more and more rare. Well, I'm just saying pure magicka builds are more and more rare all the time anymore. It's either stamina or hybrid. You don't see a ton of just pure magicka builds unless they're healers. So, yeah, I bet Resolving Vigor will end up being on most people's bars. And so you can just kind of count on that minor resolve just being a part of everyone's build. It's just going to be everywhere. In addition to ability changes, we also are getting some set changes. A lot of stuff with the Maelstrom Arena. So the Maelstrom Destro Staff, it now increases the damage of Wall of Elements by 1250, rather than increasing your light and heavy attack damage to enemies that are standing in your Wall of Elements by 1358. About 1,000 damage difference single target wise. Single target damage, that's a nerf. AoE, as far as AoE goes, it seems like a little bit of a buff, but most PvE people don't really care about AoE. They just care about that single target boss damage, so that's probably going to be considered a nerf by most. The devs say they just wanted to make it easier to use. They don't want it to be dependent on light attack weaving. That's consistent with their other stated goals. The Maelstrom two-hander, they nerfed the damage by 32%. They also gave it a 10-second duration instead of 7 seconds. The devs say that's going to make it bite less in PvP. Quick note here, Stampede, that's the ability that most people use with this ability. The dot component of its damage was also nerfed by 38%. So kind of double nerfed Maelstrom two-hander there.
They could, they said it's going to bite less. They said that is 2 words, but it's just biteless. They could have just made it 1 word. It's just
They're
biteless.
going to make it biteless.
Get rid of the space, okay?
That's funny. Yeah, totally.
Just make it 1 word.
Probably not going to see that a lot more. I use Maelstrom two-hander on my StamDK. I'm probably going to take it off and search for alternatives. Not sure what that's going to be, but yeah. I was looking at some tooltip numbers on PTS and stuff, and it's not worth the investment at this point, I don't think. But good run. Maelstrom two-hander, it was strong for a good long time.
It had its time.
It did. I remember the gap closer spam meta with Unleashed Terror. I got a 61-0 kill count with that setup one time.
What was that? Rush of Agony, Unleashed Terror, and the Maelstrom two-hander? Was that the full?
No, I've never used Rush of Agony. I think it was Unleashed Terror, Maelstrom two-hander, Master's Dual Wield, and Groth Dar monster set. That's what I think it was.
Okay.
The Maelstrom bow is actually just getting a straight buff. The ramping damage is going to be increased by 191 per tick instead of 143 per tick. So just a plain and simple buff to that one. Whereas the other two are getting nerfed. It's odd, but I'll take it. I use that on a PvE build, so I'll definitely take it.
Yeah, that ability got a decent damage buff not that long ago. So
yeah. And then the Powerful Assault set. You still use this on your Magplar healer, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Very good set that gives your teammates all a really nice damage buff. So they've given this set now a 15-second duration instead of 10 seconds, and it has a 12-meter radius instead of a 10-meter radius.
I don't know what you're talking about, Cap. My Templar is getting buffed.
Yeah, you're a pure healer Templar. It's going to be doing really well. That's actually pretty nice. Most people use the Echoing Vigor ability, the
Yep.
version of Vigor that heals other people, to proc this set. And that longer duration and that wider radius puts it closer to in line with that ability. So they kind of have similar uptimes and similar reach. I don't think they're exactly the same, but they're closer.
Yeah, and that's really, I mean, specifically, I was joking earlier, but it really is nice for my Templar healer, because that Echoing Vigor is not a super strong heal, but I do have to cast it a lot to get the Powerful Assault set ability going, and so now I can actually focus more on heals and not have to worry about spamming this as much.
Some other changes. We mentioned that this was going to happen last week, so this was implemented, on the last episode, I mean, but they went ahead and implemented it. They reduced all the health of all bosses in veteran dungeons and veteran trials.
That's the funniest change of all the things through all 5 weeks.
It seems
the one
weird.
that cracks me up the most, because it's like for 4 weeks straight they've reduced total damage, and then they were like, "Oh darn it! Well, let's just reduce the health." It's like wait a minute.
It kind of makes the whole thing seem pointless.
That's funny.
So yeah, I wonder are those fights going to seem harder or are the same or easier or what? I don't know. Something that's not on PTS, but we do have developer confirmation that this change is going to happen when the patch goes live. Empower. Remember, Empower, it now only applies to your heavy attacks and it only applies to PvE enemies. Well, when this patch goes live, they're going to make it so that Empower only applies to your fully charged heavy attacks against PvE enemies. So if you've been seeing these YouTube videos of people getting like 130,000 DPS with this weird medium attack weave rotation, don't worry, that meta is not going to happen. Because that's all based on Empower buffing up those medium attacks. But so now it's just going to apply to fully charged heavy attacks, which means basically no one is going to be trying to utilize Empower whatsoever. So there you go. Empower completely good. It's so long, Empower. You've been a good buff.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good change from where they were a week ago, but it's just, like it's kind of sad to see what Empower's become. I mean, absolutely no one will care about Empower now.
Yeah. It really is.
It's just odd because it's kind of like they just took away a buff from us, like a buff that that certain people used to use and build around, and it's just like,
exactly.
Nope, delete that one off the board. It's just a less opportunity.
What really upsets me about it is like there are like the Solar Barrage ability that I use on my Templar.
Mm-hmm.
Part of the reason I use that is because of Empower. That's just being deleted from my build. Like if you're playing PvP, that's just straight up being deleted from the build. And so half of what gives that ability value is gone now and is not being replaced with anything else. Like that. They're going to have to do a pass of all sources of Empower and be like, okay, well, what makes this useful for PvP now?
Yeah, I mean, I had my entire goal of my werewolf build was to build off Empower and light attack damage. And I was, they came out with an entire set that is about giving your allies Empower. Like, that set's going to be dead before it even, I mean, nobody's even collected it. It's just going to be gone.
Maybe if you have a team of these new buffed zoo sorks, where it's just a bunch of pet sorks, and all they do is they have their pets out, and they're just doing heavy attacks, and that's the whole thing. Because that's kind of what they do.
It's just sad to see an entire buff kind of disappear.
Yeah, it is. It really is. But anyway, that's basically everything on the PTS that we wanted to talk about anyway. Let's do some meta predictions based on what we know. Of course, there's no telling what's going to change in the future, but based on what we know right now, let's talk about what we think is going to happen in this upcoming PvP meta, in particular with Battlegrounds. That's normally kind of where our mind is at. Number one, roly-poly hybrid Nightblades. Yep. That's going to be the flavor of the patch, absolutely.
Yep, absolutely.
I'm going to be one of them.
It's going to be you. There's already a very high percentage of these, and currently, like if you do the solo queue, but I feel like now just BGs in general, it's going to be The roly-poly hybrid blades are going to be the new kind of Stamsork. They're kind of taking the over the seat.
It's going to be the annoying kind, too. The kind that's really fast, and they're turning invisible all the time, and they hit really, really hard. Yeah, so you're going to need to have your Mage Light, or your Revealing Flare, or your Camo Hunter, or your Reveal Potions. You got to have some way to pull Nightblades out of stealth, because at any given moment, when you're in a PvP zone, you're going to be surrounded by 4 or 5 invisible people at all times. So definitely have your anti-stealth ready. That's going to be the number one spec, I think. Maybe not in terms necessarily of performance, but in terms of just popularity and how many of them you see all the time. I'm going to make kind of a weird prediction that Stamina and Hybrid Sorcerers are still going to be very popular and very, very good. I think they're going to see a big drop-off in popularity right out of the gate, because that popular build that people like to use with them is getting nerfed quite a bit. So we'll see a drop-off initially, but I think as the patch goes on, as time goes on, people are going to circle back around to Stamsorks and realize you can still have a really, really strong Stamsork build. My Stamsork, like I've said lots of times, isn't being affected by these changes at all. He's been super strong for 2 patches now. I think he's still going to be extremely strong, and none of these nerfs affected him at all. So I'm predicting Stamsorks, once everything is settled and everything like that, they're still going to be have a firm place in the meta.
Yeah. Still a great class. I will say I disagree with you just a hair.
Okay.
On this one. I do think that Wardens are probably, and I think you think that very closely as well, but I do think Wardens are going to be kind of that next. I think they've been sitting on the shelf a long time. There's a lot of players out there that were really great. And I think it's mostly going to be hybrid Wardens. I don't think we're going to necessarily see Magicka Wardens, although I think that's what the devs want. I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's going to be stamina-based Wardens that depend a lot on Magicka and have a lot of Magicka resources. But I do think Wardens are going to kind of dust off that shelf, and we're going to see kind of a comeback with the Warden class.
Oh yeah, there's no question about that. I totally agree. Wardens are going to be just incredible. I mean, they're getting that extra 400 weapon and spell damage from their spammable. Arctic Blast is like a straight up OP ability now.
Yes.
Falcon Swiftness getting that snare removal, really awesome looking ability that actually has really good functionality. Yeah. Scorch is getting that nerf, but they're getting all this other stuff that I think is just going to make the class feel really good to play.
Yeah.
And they're going to have a strong sense of identity. I mean, it's looking like you're not going to have any need to go outside of your class for very much anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And I can't stress enough. We talked about it a while back, but they haven't really changed it or all or made any updates. And so with all the changes, it might be forgotten. But just like you said, that Falcon Swiftness, I mean, that is the ability now. That is a fantastic ability. I mean, it's always been good, but it's next level now.
Yeah, just a better race against time. I mean, that's you gotta have that. You gotta have snare. In my opinion, in a PvP build, you gotta have major expedition and you gotta have snare removal. That ability does it both. Plus, it gives you some nice passives. Plus, it looks freaking sweet.
You got all 3 things you need.
Yeah, you got all the basics. So definitely going to be a lot of Wardens. And a knock-on effect of that, I think this is going to be a very tanky meta. Because everyone's going to have that minor resolve from this new version of Vigor. Damage across the board is mostly going to be down because of all these changes that are happening here. And Wardens are going to be everywhere, so everybody's going to have 10% extra health. You know, everyone's going to have their major armor buff active at all times because Wardens give that to everybody.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to have heals helping them out as well. I think it's going to be hard to kill people with this next meta coming up.
Yeah. Well, and because they kind of, just like you said, the heals are back and the dots are kind of gone. So it's going to be less damage, but still almost the same amount of heals.
Mm-hmm. Dragon Knights, I think my prediction for Dragon Knights is they're just going to be kind of well balanced. They've been OP for a while because of this perma corrosive Oakenso build. That's going away. These dot nerfs are going to hurt them a little bit, but I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal. I think they're going to be like totally capable, totally like if you're a Dragon Knight main, you're probably looking at this next patch thinking, I'm going to be fine. I'm not going to be OP anymore, but you got to pay the OP tax. You were OP for a while. Now it's time to pay the tax and chill out for a little while. But I think, they're still going to be totally good. Probably see their popularity drop quite a bit, but that doesn't mean they're going to be bad.
And I would even kind of argue that's like the Dragon Knight sweet spot, like kind of right there in the middle of the line there. Like that's if they're never really that OP just best class. That perma corrosive was kind of odd. I feel like that DKs were coming in and being that really OP class. I feel like DKs are always they're the always really well balanced class, and so they're kind of back to their sweet spot.
Yeah, I've always thought of Dragon Knight as being a class that's kind of difficult to master, but when you do and you get into that groove, it's like so super satisfying because you do have all the tools that you need. They're just not as easy to use as, say, like a sorcerer's tools or something like that. So yeah, I'm liking what DKs are looking like. I'll definitely be happy to get rid of that perma corrosive build that we've been seeing so much of. That
thing's a mess.
You just learn to recognize that green kind of look that they have when that's active and just run away. Just don't even try to fight them because it's totally a losing fight. Necromancers, the dot nerfs are going to hurt Necromancers a fair amount. The Mender nerf is going to hurt them quite a bit. I think we're probably going to still see quite a few Necro Bombers out there. I think they're probably still going to be the best bombers available. And I think Bow Crows are probably still going to be pretty good. I don't think these nerfs are going to affect them quite as much. And I think my Bow Crow is probably going to start seeing quite a bit of playtime here pretty soon. So, but, if you're like kind of the typical brawler kind of Necro, I think they might struggle a little bit this patch.
Yeah. We both have Bow Crows, and I think we're both, in agreement that those are going to be just fine. But it is funny to me that Necro has just become the bombing class. Like, that's just kind of become their class identity as the bombing class. It's interesting.
Like Dark Convergence is the Necro set.
That is a Necro set.
Yeah. Ugh. Like, okay, you got yourself a Necro. Where's your set of Dark Convergence? You gotta get that on there.
If there's a guild out there, an ESO, that's the Dark Convergence Guild. I don't know what their name is. The DC Boys, whatever. that is the mortal enemy of Stuhn's Goons. All right, we're saying it now.
DC Boys versus Stuhn's Goons.
We'll meet them anytime, any place, any parking lot.
The little snap fingers thing. And then Templars. Probably not going to see a lot of Templars out there.
You know that emoji that has like the little teeth showing? Yeah,
emoji? Little kind of wince. Yeah,
that's Templar right now.
Probably not going to see a lot of Templars. I would say that maybe you'll see some Templar healers, but I think about it, I don't think Templars are the best healers. I think like Necromancers and Wardens by far beat Templars as a healer. I think maybe even Sorcerers make better healers than Templars do. Templar is thought of as this healing class, and there was a point in time in history where that is what they were. They were the very best healers by a wide margin, but so much has changed in the game. They've done so much to make every class a viable healer now. I think in a lot of respects they've been surpassed. So I don't even think you're going to see a ton of Templar healers. You're certainly not going to see a ton of offensive Templars. I mean, I'm sure you'll see some now and then. But I mean, everyone else, whether they're getting nerfed or not, there's at least something that's kind of the saving grace there. With Templar, it's not. It's just like a heavy nerf, and that's it.
That's just what it is. And I do agree with you. They used to be, the big part to them being the best healers was they had Breath of Life. That was that was the heal in the game. But they standardized Breath of Life. Almost every class has their own version of Breath of Life that's just as strong, or even some classes have a stronger heal now.
Like Shrewd Offering, the Nightblade Shrewd Offering ability, it's just as strong as Breath of Life, and it has half the magicka cost.
Yeah. So Yeah, I agree with you. They don't have what they used to have anymore. Everybody else kind of has the abilities, but Necros have the crowd control, and Magical Warden has a whole lot more heals at their disposal.
More heals and just like really handy group buffs that help people out. Like it increases everyone's health. You're making sure everyone's armor buff stays active. They have a lot of.
Yeah.
So, just not going to see a ton of Templars.
They don't have those things. Don't anybody worry. Davius will still be out there. He'll still be a BG near you.
I will say, I do see a handful of really good Templar healers that basically what they're doing is they're just stacking their ultimate regeneration as much as they can, and they're running around with that revised version of the class healing ultimate where you can move around while you're channeling it. I see a fair amount of that, but I think a lot of those are just Oaken Soul builds, so those will probably disappear.
Yeah, it's probably gonna go out the window with the Oaken Soul nerf.
So man, it's just looking bad for Templar. It's just looking real bad for Templar. Anyway, that's kind of the meta predictions. We'll see. We'll follow up on that as time goes on and see how we feel about that. We'll probably do a BG report at some point during this patch.
Yeah, for sure.
We'll see about that. I have kind of a closing some closing thoughts here. If it seems like they're fixing a bunch of things that aren't broken, or if it feels like it's a bunch of change for the sake of change, that's because that's exactly what it is. That is exactly what this is. Davius, you and I have been playing this game since 2016. It's been 6 years since we started playing this game. And you tell me, in that time, has there been a year that has passed that we haven't seen some major changes to the combat system?
Not at all. I mean, we talk about these. I mean, think about the dot meta, or there was the proc meta.
There's a reason. Swing meta.
Dizzy swing meta. There's a reason that those have those labels.
Yeah. It's year after year after year, and often patch after patch, these changes can continue to happen. And it's no secret how you balance a video game. Okay, like everyone knows, all you really have to do is just make small number adjustments from one patch to the next, and eventually you'll get there. That easy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we know that. There's no way they don't know that. Okay, they are video game makers. They know that. This is absolutely a planned cycle. It maybe sounds like I'm being a conspiracy theorist here, but hear me out here. Let's paint a good old-fashioned hypothetical scenario. Although it's actually not that hypothetical because we know these players. We can confirm firsthand that these people exist. But let's call this a hypothetical scenario. Let's say you're a brand new player. You're primarily interested in PvP and you want to be OP, right? So your buddy told you Magsorks are OP, so you make yourself a Magsork. You get leveled up as fast as you can. You get your build put together as quickly as you can, and then you jump into BGs and you just start shredding noobs and having an awesome time. And some time passes, the meta shifts, and Magsorks aren't OP anymore. Templars are OP now. So you still want to be meta. You still want to be on top, so you make yourself a new character, and this time you make a Templar. So now you got to level that character up. You got to unlock all the right skills and passives. You got to get your Undaunted, your Mage's Guild, your Psijic Order. You're going to have to farm gear for your build. That's going to involve various dungeons, trials, arenas. You're going to need to get Sky Shards for your skill points. You're going to need to get Transmute Crystals to get the right traits. You might need some Telvar Crystals if you want Tri-Stack Glyphs.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're going to have to do all that stuff. While you're at it, you have this brand new character. Maybe you want to buy some cosmetics in the Crown Store to make yourself look cool. Maybe you want to buy some mount upgrades so your horse can be nice and fast right out of the gate. Maybe you don't want to spend all that time upgrading your Undaunted, Mage's Guild, Psijic Order, all that stuff. You can just buy those skill lines. You can just buy the Sky Shards and get all your skill points that way. Every single time the meta shifts, it generates all these hours of gameplay and actual dollars spent in the Crown Store.
Revenue. Generates revenue.
Like I said, we're calling this a hypothetical scenario, but it's actually not hypothetical. We know these people. This is how they play.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it kind of sounds like I'm saying this disparagingly. I'm not necessarily. I don't think it's necessarily such a bad thing. They're in the business of making money, and you know, despite that, they do a pretty good job of keeping kind of all classes and everyone's relevant, everyone's viable, even if, one particular spec is OP or whatever. And, I like playing this game. I like being given reasons to play the game, to go put a new build together and that sort of stuff. So I guess I'm just kind of saying this as a public service announcement, like if it's a source of frustration, these constant changes, and you're always having to update your build to stay competitive, I think if you can accept that and embrace it and roll with it when it happens, you're going to have a lot better time with this game, because this isn't the first time. It's not going to be the last time. The meta will always be changing. I'm 100% convinced it is a business plan. It is intentional, and it's just going to keep happening.
Yeah. The one thing I will say to that is that I do think that, and I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the one thing I will say that right now it may seem like it's hurting a little worse is that usually with the changes and with the patches and with the expansions, we have other things to kind of fall back on a little bit more content, a little bit more newer items. And I think that's why maybe this one is a little bit more, the forums are a little bit more vocal, or there's a little bit more in-game chatter, is that we don't really have the items in the past that we've had to kind of fall back on.
Yeah, that's part of it, certainly. And people just don't like getting nerfed, just plain and simple. People see nerf and they're just not happy about that. So anyway, Dr. Professor says, I feel like a perfectly balanced game would get boring so quickly. The meta would exist forever, and every skill across all classes would be exactly the same with just a different name. Yeah, exactly. I think that's what maybe some people don't realize is perfect balance actually is not desirable. I mean, we would not actually want that, where like every fight is a stalemate all the time. So it makes sense, and I kind of like the shifting meta, and it kind of gives me, in a way, it allows for a little bit of optimism, right? Like, I'm all bummed out about Templar. I'm a Templar main. Templars are getting totally trashed, but of course I know it's only a matter of time before Templars are number one again, because it's always a cycle, and eventually Templars are going to be on top again. Who knows how long, when that'll happen, but it will at some point. Everybody gets a turn,
Yeah.
So anyway, get used to it. These changes, they're going to keep happening. So, classic Davius Starjumper timing. Now that Mid-Year Mayhem has ended. Actually, it was the day that Mid-Year Mayhem ended. Davius hit us up in Discord and was like, "Hey guys, let's hit up Imperial City. Y'all ready?"
It's time.
And of course, I was like, "Yeah, I'm down, but are you serious, dude?" This whole event, you were like MIA the whole time. Yeah, so the day the event ended, we went into Imperial City that night, and obviously all the action had died down, but we had a pretty good time anyway. We had a classic Stuhn's Goons sit chair night. It had been way too long since we did that.
It's a good one.
Shout out to Dr. Professor for joining us. He was on his Magic and Nightblade healer. Davius, you were on Lord of Nords. I was on Betsy, my StamPlar. And we had a nice little squad there. Typical sit chair night. We started at home base. We ran all the way to the middle, killed everything on our way. Mm-hmm. Killed Molag Bal. Mm-hmm. And then we decided to go down Aldemari's tunnel with the intention of going all the way to their door, but we ran into a giant blue Zerg about 3/4 through. Do you remember that? There was probably 20 of them, I would say.
Yeah.
It had to have been like a guild event going on or something. Like, it was just so many of them.
Slightly outnumbered.
I think we lasted a solid 30 seconds, though. I was kind of impressed. But they got us. They killed us. So we res back at home base, ran back to the middle again, killed Molag Bal again. This time decided to go down Blue's tunnel. Maybe thinking we might get some revenge or something like that. But we did not see a soul that entire time. So we just killed all the bosses and mobs and everything and made it all the way to Blue's door. We touched their door out of a sign of disrespect, of course.
Totally disrespected them.
Absolutely.
Blue's out there listening. We touched the door.
And then the most important part, we did slash sit chair in the chat, made our characters sit down in chairs and just chill out in front of their door there. And just wait for people to come outside. I think only one blue player came outside, and he just stood up on that safety platform for like a minute or whatever. He just kind of looked at us, and then he went back inside, and then we did not see anyone else after that. That was basically, we waited maybe like 15 minutes, but it was cool. We were hanging out there. Oh yeah, shout out to the random warden person that joined up with our group and was just down for whatever.
Went the full journey with us, and even hopped in on the sit chair.
He even pulled out his chair. He definitely got it. He didn't know what was going on, but he was happy to play along. So, there's always a hope that we'll get a little bit of a brawl going there with the sit chair situation. But, yeah, no one ever came out. We eventually just gave up. But honestly, to me, it's all about touching that door, showing that disrespect, and putting your butts in chairs. And
it's the most important part.
As long as you do that, you've had a successful sit chair night.
The most important part.
And it was a good time. We were in Discord and voice. You, me, and Dr. P just kind of cracking jokes and goofing around while we were doing it. It made me really miss Imperial City, like the old days when we did Imperial City all the time.
Yeah.
There's something in particular about the sewers, and I feel like not everyone appreciates the sewers the way we do. I've realized that. A lot of people I go to Imperial City with, they only want to go up top, and they just want to find PvP, and that's it. But the sewers are kind of an interesting thing, because sometimes I kind of want a little bit of PvP, but I don't want to just go hard all the time.
Yeah.
And the sewers are nice with a squad of 3 people or so, because it's basically just PvE, and you do some boss fights, and you're just kind of talking and listening to music and having a good time. And there's these moments of excitement where PvP will break out, and you'll have that little encounter there, but then it's just back to cruising.
Yep.
I kind of like that kind of going back and forth like that. It's a lot of fun.
Absolutely.
So thanks for coming along, Dr. Professor. Betsy was in fine form. My StamPlar. I was really enjoying just blasting through Imperial City with her, just like old times.
Her final days.
Yeah, this was kind of her last hurrah.
We're losing old Betsy. She's she's not gonna make it. She's not going to make it through this next patch.
Yeah, it was a bittersweet experience because right now she's in the best shape of her life. Like, seriously, top form, like peak Betsy. So it was really fun just to be playing with her and see her in such great shape. But yeah, at the same time, I was like, it's going to be so sad here in a couple of weeks. Her build right now, it's a slight variation of the build that I have been using. It's Deadly Strikes as a front bar set with a 2-handed maul. Wretched Vitality as a back bar set with a bow, 3 agility on the jewelry, and the Gaze of Sithis mythic helm. So basically what I changed is she used to use the master bow. I got rid of that and made Wretched Vitality a back bar set instead, and then I replaced Poison Injection with that Solar Barrage ability. That now the Empower is basically being deleted, so I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that, but I think for now I'm just going to keep the build how it is. I have no idea what I want to do with the build or if I even want to do anything different at all. I think I'm just going to keep it just like it is, let this patch go live, jump into some BGs, and just see where we're at.
Yeah.
I'm losing some damage, but other people are losing some damage too. Maybe it won't feel as bad as I'm thinking it will. There's always that possibility. Like, you can only do so much testing on PTS and draw so many conclusions from that, but there's no replacement for an actual just real live battlegrounds experience with the players you're normally going up against and that kind of stuff. So we'll just see how it all shakes out, and maybe things will feel okay. We'll see. But I'm going to try. I'm going to stick with Betsy. I'm not just going to abandon her. We're gonna see what we can do to pull through. But I think ultimately what I'm really just going to have to do is just accept that we're losing damage, because I'm not going to get that damage back without sacrificing what makes this build this build. All these things that have been a part of what this character is the whole time that I'm not willing to sacrifice. So if anything has to get sacrificed, it would be the damage, in my mind.
Yeah. So
anyway, thoughts and prayers for Betsy. Keep her in your minds. Lord of Nords seems to be in fine form.
He's doing good right now. He's still feeling really good.
Still doing that Oaken Soul setup?
Yep, he's got the Oaken Soul setup. Just quick reminder of his build is that he has the Warrior's Fury Bloodspawn, a couple pieces of Trainee, and then the Oakensoul. He's feeling really good. And then he also has the 3-piece Potentates to get that ult reduction.
I don't know if we said Lord of Nords is your Stamina Dragon Knight.
Stamina DK. Yeah, listeners know. They know.
The regulars know. But hey, maybe someone's listening for the first time ever.
New listeners.
Hello, new listener.
Hey, hello.
Welcome.
Hey out there.
We have a guild called Stuhn's Goons.
We're not to that part?
Oh, yeah. That's later.
But yeah, my Stamina Dragon Knight, he's doing real good. And I think he's kind of going to be, the Oakensoul nerf is going to hurt him a little bit. But I've got some ideas and plans. I think he's going to be just fine next patch. He'll be losing a little bit of damage, but I think I'm going to find a way to put that new whip on his bar to get that 300 passive weapon and spell damage. And so I think he's going to be just fine. All Lord Nords is going to be good.
You are going to stick with the Oakensoul on that?
Yep.
Nice.
I mean, it's still, and we've said this, we haven't spoken on it in a little bit, but Oakensoul is still going to be great.
It's still going to be really good. Yeah.
So many buffs that it's giving you and 100% uptime on those buffs. It's just still
you can't overstate how much value there is and just not having to think about buff management, period. Yeah. It's
from
just
a
not
resource standpoint and
yeah, and from a mental resource standpoint as well.
Exactly. And I'll even go to, your weapon damage buff is your most basic buff. You've got your defense buff, your major resolve, and then your weapon damage buff. Those are the ones you're supposed to keep up as close to 100% uptime. But throughout an entire BG, there's going to be times where your weapon damage buff just falls off at the
it's
wrong
going to
moment.
drop. Yeah.
And you just don't have to worry about that.
Yeah. Cool, man. Yeah, he's just seems like he's in excellent shape. We paired him up with my StamBlade, who I talked about so much on the last episode, Catface Johnson.
Catface himself.
And man, I was really surprised at actually what a decent pair those two made. Like I was I was actually not expecting that to be like the most ideal pairing, honestly. I was like, oh, we'll just make the best of it. It'll be fine. But that's just, those are the characters we just wanted to play with at that time. And we grouped up and did some BGs together, and man, they actually make a really good pair. I think Nightblade's just like having a big, brutish kind of up in your face brawler. Yeah, some dude that like jumps up and takes all the attention, and everyone's kind of focused on that dude. And meanwhile, I'm back in the shadows, kind of up to no good, Yep. So, and that's exactly just like what Lord of Nords is. That's exactly what you have that character designed to do. That's exactly how you play him. It is very loud and brash.
He needs all of the attention. He likes to be the center.
Yes, and it's just like I'm just over here, just like rubbing my hands together, like yes, perfect. It's really nice, and you're pretty tanky. You can take a hit or two, and Catface, he's using the Shrewd offering, the class Burst Heal, which is really strong. Mm-hmm. And he has Wretched Vitality, so he has a lot of magicka recovery. So when your health bar does get low, I'm pumping you full of heals quite a bit and keeping you alive. Heals away
big time.
So I'm keeping an eye on that, keeping you alive, or helping you. You're keeping yourself alive pretty good, but I'm helping. And then just looking for offensive opportunities at the same time. And man, they just kind of have this synergy that I wasn't really expecting, those two characters. And it worked out really well. I want to play with those two some more, honestly.
Yeah, it worked. It did work out well.
And it's neat to think of them as like in like a role play sort of sense. Like Lord of Nords is like this big hulking, freaking NFL linebacker kind of dude. And Catface is like this small cat man that's like hiding in the shadows, and they're like kind of opposites personality wise, but they complement each other in these ways.
They are the ESO version of The Rock and Kevin Hart. There you go. There it is, right there.
That's it. That's exactly what they are. We're gonna change their names.
There you go.
So yeah, we got to get those two together more often. That was a really good time. Catface is taking up all of my playtime, like 100% of my playtime. It's like
he's making up for some lost time. That's what he's doing.
He sure is, man. And it's not slowing down anytime soon. Like I pull up my character select screen, and it's just like the idea of playing with any other character is just laughable. It's just like, why would I ever not play with StamBlade? Like, that's just a ridiculous thought.
It's just so funny because of all your characters, he has been so deep in that cupboard, so far in the back for years. I'm not talking patches. I'm talking years.
Years, yes, yeah.
He's back. He's back.
Yeah, literally, like his first ever PvP build, I made it like 3 weeks ago. And I've been
and it's your first character ever for all of
first character ever made. Yeah. Man, talk about, like I was saying, Betsy's in the best shape of her life right now. And talk about best shape of their life, man. Catface is like absolutely in the best shape of his life.
Yeah, I would argue though, maybe next batch he's gonna be even better shape.
Yeah, and that's good and bad, but I'll just say what the build is really quick. It's, of course, Wretched Vitality as a full body set. Griffin's Ferocity on the front bar with dual maces. Got the Master Bow on the back bar. Gaze of Sithis Mythic Helm. And One Piece Magma Incarnate. Pretty standard setup for me, but also a very, very good setup, man. It's seriously a very good build. I've settled on 4 medium, 2 light, and the 1 heavy Sithis Helm. Those are the weights that kind of feel the best to me in terms of sustain. I was trying 3 medium, 3 light. I tried 5 medium, 1 light. 4 medium, 2 light is what I always end up coming back to. That's just what feels just right to me. I switched to the concealed weapon morph of the spammable. So the Magicka morph. So now that puts me at 5 Magicka abilities, 5 stamina abilities. And with Wretched active and with the potion active, I have like 1900 Magicka recovery and 2000 stamina recovery. And so, it's my abilities are split between 2 different pools, and both pools have quite a bit of recovery. So really neither resource pool is being taxed very heavily at all. It seriously just plays like a dream. Like it feels like I'm flying. I'm never thinking about resources. It's just endless. And it's not. It might seem like I'm over-invested in sustain, but man, the damage is absolutely there. Like, there's no shortage of damage, man. This dude is just absolutely nuking people with his 110% crit damage. And he's pushing about 6,000 weapon damage, and that's not an astronomical amount, but he has a really good amount of penetration, a really good amount of crit. And, like his Merciless Resolve has like a 21k tooltip, how much damage do you need?
That's all you need right there.
The damage is ample. I'll pull off a Merciless Resolve. If that thing crits with that 110% crit damage behind it, and like my 11,000 penetration helping it out as well, the dude hits really, really hard. He's about to have 10% more damage too here pretty soon. This guy makes me very concerned about Betsy, because all the things that I just got done saying about Betsy, all that's happening, she's getting nerfed pretty hard. This dude is getting buffed significantly, and he basically fills the same niche that Betsy fills. They're both bow in the back bar, melee on the front bar, medium armor, roly-poly, speedy, evasive kind of builds. They're primarily offensively focused, but they have some group support capabilities. They have very similar support capabilities between them. But Catface is getting majorly buffed. Betsy's getting majorly nerfed. So when I'm in the mood for that kind of play style, plus I can turn invisible. I mean, that's just freaking cool. So it's just like, how do I not play with Catface? Are you kidding me? So it makes me kind of concerned because it's a very well-rounded build. I'm not just a ganker with this guy. Like, he plays kind of like Betsy, and I often use stealth as a last resort. I'm not just hanging out in stealth. And if somebody pulls me out of stealth, it's not like it's game over. I can brawl. He's got the same survivability that any of my non-stealth characters have. So it's not like it's the end of the world if he gets pulled out of stealth or anything like that. He's got heals, he's got movement, he's got major evasion. He'll be just fine. So I guess my talk about my StamBlade has just turned into more lamenting my StamPlar, really. But yeah.
She'll be back. One day she'll be back.
She'll be back. Catface is looking really, really good. He's got a new look. I keep changing his look.
Is this new since I've seen it?
No,
An
I think
update
I've
since
showed you the most
okay.
recent one, because this one I've stuck with for like a week now. I think I finally found a look that I really like. He kind of looks like Skeletor, if Skeletor was a cat.
Oh, yeah. Yep, I've seen that one.
I think it looks pretty cool. It's kind of like, I don't know, it kind of looks like a 90s action figure from like a Ninja Turtles playset or something.
Absolutely. I was just about to say Ninja Turtles. He's the one of the people you would find.
He's like he's one of those characters that like showed up in one episode and then they made a action figure out of him. Yeah. So anyway, he's got a pretty good look. His theme is just wild card. You know, all my characters kind of have a certain vibe, a certain theme I try to fit, but Catface, anything goes. We're just having fun over here. He might look goofy one day, he might look scary the next day. We're just doing whatever we want with Catface.
You know what his theme is? It's up to no good.
He's up to no good. I think wild card fits him pretty good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's Catface. You'll probably be hearing more from him in future episodes. You played a little bit with your Stamina Warden, Bearclaw. What's going on with him, man?
Old Stamina Warden Bearclaw. So his current setup right now is he's kind of got the Warden pet build going, in the fact that it's kind of a mixed match, because he still does the point blank snipe. He's got Oaken Soul on there, and then he has the Maw of the Infernal monster set, and then he has the 5-piece set where he spawns the Hunger. I need to think of these sets. The more important thing is, and this is really what I'm getting to, is that those sets really aren't important. That's just very much a this patch build.
Oh, okay.
It's a very hodgepodge. It was kind of thrown together. It works with the current version of Oaken Soul, and it's fun because it summons a lot of stuff and it deals damage. But it's very short-lived. With this new patch, he's going to undergo some actual pretty large changes. And these are changes I haven't even told you about. This is some Bearclaw changes. So let me just start off. Most importantly,
okay,
he's still gonna have that bear. Don't you worry.
Oh,
he's still gonna have that bear.
Whew. Thank goodness.
He's still gonna have that bear. But I'd kind of teased earlier that they've really been pushing the Magica Warden, and they've got all these kind of focusing. And I was kind of joking about that. Really, it'll just mainly be hybrid wardens, and it will be. I still will be a very hybrid warden class, but I'm definitely going to be leaning more into the Magica side. So, kind of the idea I have for him, and I have all the sets to make it happen. I'm just kind of waiting for the patch to go live. But the Magica version of the Cliff Racer, he's going to get that 400 passive weapon and spell damage. Now, the key part to here that I'm going to say is that damage, that deals magic damage. You can do the Magica version of the Scorch, the Deep Fisher.
Yeah.
Also magic damage. And there's a version of Morph of the Bear that also does magic damage.
So are we talking War Maiden?
We're talking War Maiden.
Okay.
Wretched Vitality back bar. War Maiden front bar.
I like it. Best build I've ever heard.
You just need to hear that Wretched Vitality. And so really, honestly, that's kind of why I didn't even really think about his current sets. It's very short-lived, but I kind of like the idea. I've plugged it into the build editor, and I think it's got real potential. I mean, it'll still probably... I know it's kind of crazy to say this because I just named a bunch of Magica abilities, but it's probably still going to play like a Stamina Warden in the sense that it'll probably be a bow front bar situation, but in the very odd sense that he will be dependent on Magica abilities.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. But that War Maiden is just gonna, it just buffs so many of their class abilities, where it'll kind of be, I'm gonna be kind of playing him kind of like I would a old school Templar. War Maiden used to be kind of the Templar setup, but with some of the changes they're making and adjustments, I think that War Maiden on a Magica hybrid Warden Stamina, whatever you want to call it, I think it's going to work out really well. The new version of the bird, obviously Arctic Blast, that'll find its way on there. Don't you worry about that.
Totally sounds viable. Absolutely. Oh, Bear Claw.
Bear Claw.
Maybe we'll get him and Betsy together. Betsy's going to be depressed, so we're going to have to get her out of the house. Come on,
Gotta
Betsy.
cheer her up.
Let's
Hey,
do
don't
a
worry, Bear
BG.
Claw. Come on, Betsy. One step at a time. But yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad to say because I really have enjoyed kind of this point blank snipe period with Bear Claw, but I'm pretty happy to get away from it because, like I said earlier, I bet that ability, I bet I hit 25% of the time with that ability. It is, like you said, people hear that noise and they know, oh,
yeah.
Dodge.
Later, Dr. P. Have a good night, man.
Have a good night. So I'm excited. I'm excited for this new age Bear Claw that, maybe instead of hitting 25% of the time with the Cliff Racer, he'll hit 50% of the time.
Yeah. Hey, you keep spamming it. It's got to hit eventually, right?
It's going to hit eventually.
It's got to. Cool, man. Is that all you got for Bear Claw?
Well, that's Bear Claw. I'm excited. I already have all the sets. Like I said, I'm gonna throw it together when the patch goes live, and if everything goes well, he'll probably be kind of who I'm focusing with. You know what? Like I said, I'll stick with Lord of Nords, but kind of a rotation between Lord of Nords and Bear Claw.
Love to get him and Lola together again too. My magic award and healer. I'm gonna want to play with her a lot more too because she's getting. I've kind of stopped focusing on her lately, but she is actually going to be really good this next patch. She's in the same situation as Bear Claw where she's ready when the patch goes live. I just have a few changes I'm waiting to make for that patch, and then she's going to be ready to hit the ground running on that.
Yep.
So I heard a rumor that you finished High Isle. I heard that rumor from you.
Oh my goodness. This is true. Okay. And I got a little spiel that I want to talk about here.
Mm-hmm.
I won't go too long, but so I finished High Isle and I did enjoy it. I really liked the quest. Feel like we're past the point of spoilers, but some spoilers ahead. There's some very VIP NPCs that show up, and it was a good quest, and you go through, and I enjoyed it. I will say, I enjoyed it, and I happily did the quest, and I actually finished out the full zone. So I did the Delve quest and the public dungeon quest. I liked it. I thought it went really well, and I felt good about it. And then at risk of just upsetting you, I was I did it on Davius. He's my quester. And so I was just kind of looking around, and I noticed that on Somerset, Davius just kind of shot through the main quest of Somerset. And so I just noticed that I had a bunch of stuff in Somerset that I hadn't done. And with Davius, I really kind of try to go and complete each zone. He's kind of my full do-it-all, character.
Yeah.
And so I went over to Somerset, I was running around, and then I was just starting to do some of the side quests, some of the areas that I noticed I hadn't done. It was crazy to me. It was kind of like a rock to my face in the sense of running around Somerset, seeing the scenery and the design and the layout of the zone, as well as the detail of just the side quests. Like I said, I'd already done the main quest. I had just did side quests. It was just a level above of High Isles, which just kind of blew me away that High Isles is the new one, and that's the one that they said kind of had the focus on the questing and the quest line and the writing.
Yeah, it's all about the writing.
Yeah, but I mean, just the side quests on Somerset, I was blown away with how detailed they were, how long, and even with them being really long, I didn't feel like they were long. I didn't feel like they were stretched out. I was thoroughly into those, and I was reading the NPC dialogue, where on High Isle, I got to a point where, you kind of skip ahead. You read a couple lines and skip. Mm-hmm. And I went to Somerset fully planning to just clear the map and caught myself fully in depth in the quest and running around and learning about the zone and then just run around the zone. There's such a story to the layout of the zone. And I'm not even talking quest story. I'm talking about the layout of the geography that You'll run across the map and you'll run into these ruins that really don't have a story. They're just really cool to look at. There's all these different different types of trees and wildlife and different colors. And then you'll run across a dry creek bed, and then that'll dive down into this cavern, and you'll go down there. There'll be a big waterfall, and there's no quests or anything. It's just a cool kind of untold story of a zone just with the geography. And it just kind of blew my mind that the level above that seemed to me, and that I don't know. I just didn't get that level with High Isle. And not saying it's bad. I'm not really. I know this is probably coming across negative. I don't mean it to. I enjoyed High Isle, but it was just kind of they haven't hit that Somerset level with High Isle. It's just not the same.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a while since I feel like there hasn't been another Somerset since Somerset, but
sure.
Elsewhere is pretty close. Elsewhere is a pretty good one.
Elsewhere was very good. I liked Elsewhere, and I Northern Elsewhere I really liked because it was such a different type of zone in geography, and I thought that was really cool, and they did a good job with it. And Southern Elsewhere is anybody that goes Southern Elsewhere, it's this really tiny, well laid out, compact zone. And the quests and the Elsewhere quests were great. Figuring out about the dragons and the necromancers at the same time. They were great, seemed really epic, and those were really good. But yeah, it just I don't know. It seems it's not like it just seems we're losing just a little bit over time, which instead of gaining a little bit over time, it just seems like it's just like we're losing a couple flakes here and there.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. I was thinking of was it Western Skyrim that had the questing companions that would follow you around and comment on other questing opportunities?
That was
as you'd run by, you'd be on your main quest and you'd be running towards an objective, and on your way your little companion would be like, hey, maybe we should stop and help these people. And if High Isle was where they're trying to say hey, here's where we're really going to get creative with the writing and everything, I was expecting a lot more of that kind of stuff.
That was a very cool feature that kind of died with Western Skyrim. It was kind of there.
I haven't really seen that since. I liked that a lot. That added a ton of immersion, and I liked having an NPC kind of reminding me hey, don't just beeline the main story. Here's a quest right here. Do that. Quest. Yeah.
That was in Western Skyrim. It was I can't remember his name. I think it started with an F, but it was that vampire. Assistant guy. I can't remember what his name was. He followed you around for a little bit, and then he would, if there was a side quest or a delve or somebody, he'd be like, hey, what is, let's talk to this person real quick. And just High Isle, I just, like I said, it was good, it was well done, and I enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with the quest. I just don't understand why they hyped it up with the writing. That seems like
well, they had to hype something,
That's true, but it was hype the card game or something, It's almost like because they put very VIP NPCs in it that they were trying to sell it as hey, these are really important people. So that means that the dialogue on these quests is really important. It's it's cool to see important NPCs, but
yeah, I don't want to sound overly harsh, but it seems like a kind of a lazy chapter, honestly.
We still have Q4. Maybe there's some wild change,
Q4s are often some of my favorite DLCs, honestly. They're like little mini chapters, There's not as much to it, but they're often really cool. I think this year, if they follow the pattern that they have been, I think we should get an arena of some kind Q4 this year. I don't think they've ever officially stated that that's the pattern that they're following, but it just so happens to every other year Q4 we get an arena, and this would be the year to do that if we're going to get another one.
I really like the Q4 zones. I feel like they're smaller, but they're more well planned out, and
because they're smaller.
Yeah, right. And I just really tend to enjoy that. Those are the zones I really like to hang out in.
Yeah, Southern Elsewhere, always a great example. Yep. I liked Murkmire. I know Murkmire was not a very popular DLC, but that was a Q4. And I liked it quite a bit. I thought it's very unique kind of place, very interesting. The music there is one of a kind. I like it a lot.
Yep. I already told you this, but I really like the Reach. I thought that was a really Q4 zone, really neat zone that they really did a lot with elevation in that zone, and I really liked that. Grizzly
says Murkmire was outstanding. I agree, man. People,
it was good.
I feel I see a lot of people kind of dunk on Murkmire, but I liked it quite a bit. But I like Argonians. I've been doing a fair amount of PvE as well. So I've been talking about Catface Johnson, my StamBlade, my original character. I've been doing a lot of PvP with him. He's basically been the only character I've been playing with. And, back in the day when I was traipsing about with Catface, um, I cleared all the maps, or most of the maps, or so I thought. But back in those days, I wasn't really aware of add-ons, and I didn't have any add-ons. And now that I'm logging in with him and I do have these add-ons, I'm seeing all sorts of stuff that I missed. And basically every zone. There's like world bosses or a delve or even quest lines. Like I've missed entire side quests and stuff like that. So it's just me and old Catface, like old times, going around the map and picking up the stuff I missed and just questing and exploring some more. And that's just been really enjoyable. I've really been liking that. I put a real basic PvE build together just out of stuff that I have in my bank. It's just like good enough. And we've just been running around doing stuff. I've even been doing daily Undaunted pledges, like the 2 easy veteran pledges. I've been doing those each day, and that's been fun, man. Just kind of.
You've even been hanging out in old East March, doing some quests.
Yeah, well, East March is the zone that I've been working on most recently. Yeah, to clear that all out.
I think you were hanging out in old Cradle Crush.
Yeah, I got kicked by the giant. That giant kicked me up in the air.
Absolutely.
That, like Skyrim reference kind of thing.
From there, you're gonna head south down to Fort Mole. No big deal. Head down there.
I think I actually did make it there.
Well, that's part of the main quest, so you probably did do that one. That's not a side quest one.
Yeah, that's actually been taking up a fair amount of my time. Like, I kind of have been not burned out, but we just had Mid-Year Mayhem. I've been doing a lot of PvP, a lot of real intense kind of stuff. So I'm kind of lately been in the mood to kind of take it down a gear or two and just kind of do some more mellow activities, do some quests, do some PvE kind of stuff, and that's been pretty enjoyable. And to do it with old Catface Johnson, man, it's just been freaking cool.
That is cool. Full circle. You're having a full circle ESO moment.
I know. It's kind of funny. Like all these years later, I'm still like just running around with this little cat guy, doing quests and exploring delves and stuff like that. And, man, I really wish I could recapture that feeling of when I was first playing this game. And it was like this big, infinite adventure I had waiting in front of me, and I didn't even know what the heck this game even was. And man, I remember nothing beats that first playthrough. And if you're actually treating it like a real RPG, and then that's what you're here for. Like, man, I remember finding just like a blue helmet. Like, oh, sweet, this one's blue.
I remember my moment of that where it's just pure naive excitement. Is like when you hopped into your first delve and there was like weapons or armor that laying there, just white gear, but it's like you go up on a table and there's a whole set of armor there. So,
yeah, like, oh, I can use this.
Yeah, and the excitement of finding that and being like, oh, look at all this gear here, man.
Yeah, every time you get
you can't recapture that.
Every time you get some new weapon, like, oh, this one has a frost glyph on it. Cool, like,
or the first time you find like your first set item and you're like, oh, look at all the stuff this has on it.
Yeah. It's like little things. Like now it's just like, oh, I can just do whatever glyph I want, I can make whatever build I want. But back then, man, if it had like like I would really pay close attention to the trait and like, oh, a fire glyph or whatever. And, maybe for this fight I want to use my shock dagger or whatever. Such an innocent time,
just pure innocence.
Yeah. But it was fun. So yeah, it's just been awesome to be spending so much more time with Catface. I hope he doesn't consume all of my gameplay forever and ever, but I'm gonna allow it for a while. Just gonna let it happen, making up for some lost time. Emails and shout outs. We don't have any emails this week, but if you'd like to email us, you can send us an email at scrollandpodcast@gmail.com. If you have any suggestions or questions or anything you'd like to say, anything goes as long as you're nice about it. Scrollandpodcast@gmail.com. Real quick shout out to Dr. Professor. He had a question about, we were talking in Discord about Wretched Vitality, the crafted set Wretched Vitality versus Shacklebreaker. And he was saying that it seems like they offer a similar amount of kind of numeric value. And that's true. I mean, technically that is true. And back in the day when Shacklebreaker was first introduced, that was my set.
Oh, yeah. The Shacklebreaker days.
Yeah, and I wasn't the only one. And Wretched Vitality is my set now, and they kind of are similar, but the conditions have changed, right? Back when Shacklebreaker was first introduced, max stats were not nearly as easy to come by, and so those stats that it was giving you, along with sustain and damage, was just kind of too good to pass up. But ever since the Flames of Ambition patch, that kind of changed everything, and max stats are just kind of overabundant now. So a lot of what Shacklebreaker is giving you just isn't all that useful, and you don't really have the option to convert that excess stats into damage or into sustain or anything like that. Whereas Wretched Vitality, all that sustain it's giving you is absolutely useful.
Yeah, and back barable. That is a huge part of Wretched.
And it's back barable. That is also a big part of it. So that's that. If you have Wretched Vitality and you're using like the Bewitched Sugar Skulls for your food, I mean, you have all the stats you need already right there. So it's just hard to justify Shacklebreaker. Amazing set in its day, but it doesn't hold up these days, I don't think. Shout out to the chat, Grizzly Khan and Dr. Professor. Always a pleasure having you two. Also, a special shout out to Grizzly Khan by request.
The requested shout out. They're rare, but you see them every now and then. They're,
I guess it
fantastic.
never really occurred to me, but there's no reason why not. We can't just have shout outs by request. If you want us to shout you out, scrollingpodcast@gmail.com or hit us up in Discord or whatever.
There we go.
Just say, yo, give me a shout out, and you got it, friend.
We still gotta get with Grizz and figure out the royalties on the shout out Grizzly Con t-shirt sales.
Yeah.
Like what percentage does Grizz want? We gotta have his, image and likeness on the t-shirt.
Yeah, I was also thinking people could submit shout-outs if they wanted to. So, like, Grizzly Khan could say, like, hey, shout out to Dr. Professor, he did this thing for me or whatever. Or, shout out to these people I did this dungeon with or whatever. Shout out people within the Scrolling Podcast community. We could do that sort of thing. So if you have someone you want to shout out, scrollingpodcast@gmail.com. I don't know. It's just an idea I thought of.
I like the idea. I'm laughing because I'm going to laugh that the first email is just somebody just requesting a shout out to Grizzly Khan. Can we get a good old fashioned shout out to Grizzly Khan?
What if we just get 20 emails? It's just that.
Yeah. Let's get a good old Grizzly Khan. Shout out Grizzly Khan.
Shout out to Kenton Davies for making this podcast, Grizzly Khan says. Yeah. Man, it does feel pretty good to get a shout out. Gotta admit.
Man. This is what it feels like, Grizz? This adrenaline rush.
Once you get a taste. We have a guild. The guild's name is Stuhn's Goons. It is the best named guild on the PCNA server. It's also the official guild of the Scrollin' Podcast. If you'd like to be a member of Stuhn's Goons, send us an email at scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. If you're already a member of 5 guilds and you don't want to get rid of one, totally cool, no big deal. We can get you into the Discord regardless. So scrollinpodcast@gmail.com. We'll invite you to the Discord. And as far as I'm concerned, Davies, as far as you're concerned, right? You think? Maybe? Anyone who's in the Discord is a goon.
As I was thinking through this, I was just thinking that we need to, you got a bleep. You got some bleep powers. You need to just start bleeping out the name part of your speech. It's just the best bleep guild in the...
The best guild in the...
Just throw that bleep in there over the named, and I really think it's going to get our message across. That's what we're going for. That's where we're at.
Yeah, that bleep could be any number of words.
Oh, yeah.
Scrollingpodcast@gmail.com.
Good stuff.
But yeah, like I was saying, if you just want to join the Discord, that's cool too, and you won't be excluded from any guild events or anything like that. It's all good. So come along, have fun with us, Stuhn's Goons. Anything else, Davius?
I think that's it.
Man, this thing went longer than I thought.
We hit a little, we hit a little groove there.
We were grooving. Okay, I think that's it. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time. We were grooving.
We were grooving.